The sky never changed. It hung overhead like a wound that refused to close, thick, grey, and choked with ash. No sun pierced it. No stars shimmered beyond it. The planet did not rotate beneath a hopeful dawn or soften into night. It simply endured. And at the center of that endless stillness lay a dragon waiting to die. His name was Veilrith. Once, entire battlefields had fallen silent when his shadow crossed them. Cities had trembled beneath the hurricane force of his wings. His fire had burned white-hot, so bright it turned sand to glass and steel to memory. Now his wings were broken. One lay twisted at an unnatural angle, membrane torn and bone protruding through scaled flesh. The other dragged uselessly in the dust, fractured during orbital drop. The Council had not bound him. They had not chained him. They had simply thrown him. Exile without execution. Mercy without mercy. This world is lifeless, the High Magistrate had declared before the drop bay opened. Let it finish what we will not. Veilrith remembered the stars spinning as gravity took hold, the atmosphere tearing at his scales, the violent impact that shattered rock beneath him. He had survived. Dragons often did. For 3 days he crawled across basalt plains that stretched into nothingness. There was no water, no vegetation, no carrion, not even insects scratching beneath the surface. The planet had been scanned, certified barren. Even microbes had abandoned it. By the 4th day, Veilrith could no longer stand. He collapsed beside a jagged ridge of volcanic stone, chest heaving as ash settled across his body like a burial shroud. Each breath scraped his lungs raw. His internal fire gland, surgically damaged before exile, throbbed uselessly. They had made sure he could not burn. He tried anyway. He inhaled slowly, drawing from the ancient furnace within his chest, and exhaled. Smoke, thin, pathetic, gone before it touched the ground. A dragon without flame, a weapon stripped of purpose. The silence pressed heavier than gravity. No wind moved. No sound carried. It was as though the universe itself had turned away. Veilrith's vision blurred at the edges. His pulse slowed. The ash-coated sky above him swam in dull grey waves. So this is how legends end, he thought. Not in battle, not in defiance, but in quiet erasure. His breathing grew shallow, slower. One final inhale. Then, the sky tore open. A streak of white fire ripped through the cloud layer, carving a violent scar across the grey heavens. Veilrith's eye snapped open. Another streak followed. And another. Not meteors. Too controlled. Too deliberate. Something was entering the atmosphere. The sound came seconds later, a distant roar that grew into a thunderous scream. The clouds churned violently as a metallic shape burst through, trailing engineered flame. Not dragon fire. Something colder. Constructed. The object spiraled downward, smoke and sparks tearing behind it. It vanished beyond the ridge line, and struck the planet with a shock wave that cracked stone and shattered centuries of silence. The ground trembled. Ash plumed into the air. Veilrith forced his head upward, muscles trembling from the effort. Through the haze, far across the wasteland, something moved near the smoking crater. Small, upright, walking. The planet was lifeless. It had been proven. So why? Why was something alive? The figure turned toward him, and began to walk closer. Darkness pulled at Veilrith's vision. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness claimed him was a lone silhouette crossing a dead world that was never meant to hold life again. That was the first thing Veilrith felt. Not the cold bite of ash-laden wind. Not the dull ache of shattered bone. Warmth. His eyes opened slowly. The sky was still grey, but something flickered nearby. Controlled flame contained within a circular barrier of blackened stone. The scent in the air was unfamiliar. Cooked protein. Processed nutrients. Life. Veilrith's head jerked upward with a low growl. Several meters away, a small upright creature sat beside the fire. Smooth skin. No scales. No visible armor. Dark hair clung damply to its forehead. A torn environmental suit lay, partially unsealed, at its neck. Two forward-facing eyes studied him calmly. Not prey eyes. Not predator eyes. Thinking eyes. "You're awake," the creature said. Its voice vibrated strangely, shorter tonal range than dragon speech, but Veilrith's neural translator activated with a faint pulse behind his horn ridge. "You should not exist here," Veilrith rasped. His throat felt like broken stone. The creature exhaled something that might have been a laugh. "Funny. I was about to say the same thing." Veilrith attempted to rise. Pain exploded along his damaged wing, forcing him back down. The creature didn't flinch, didn't reach for a weapon. It simply watched. "You've got compound fractures," the being said. "Left wing worse than the right. Dehydrated. Malnourished." Veilrith's eyes narrowed. "You know nothing of dragon physiology." "True," the creature admitted. "But broken is broken." Silence stretched between them. The fire crackled. Veilrith inhaled sharply, testing his internal flame gland again. Only a faint warmth answered. "Weapons," he demanded. "Where are they?" The creature tilted its head slightly. "If I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead." Confidence. Unshaken. Veilrith studied him more carefully now. Compact frame. Musculature dense for its size. Movements economical. The wreckage in the distance still smouldered, twisted metal scattered across ash plains. "You fell from the sky," Veilrith said slowly. "Yeah. Ship malfunction. Or someone didn't like me very much." The creature reached behind him and tossed a sealed hydration pack across the ground. It skidded to a stop inches from Veilrith's claws. "Drink." Veilrith stared at it. "Poison is inefficient," the creature added. The dragon hesitated only a moment before crushing the seal with a claw tip. Water spilled into his mouth. It burned. Not with fire. With life. His body trembled as the liquid coursed through him. Muscles that had begun to shut down twitched awake. The creature nodded once, as if confirming a calculation. "You've been alone a while," it observed. Veilrith said nothing. "Planet scans said 0 life," the creature continued. "Guess the scans were wrong." "They were not," Veilrith replied. "This world is death." The creature poked at the fire thoughtfully. "Not any more." Something about the certainty in that statement unsettled him. "You speak boldly for something so small," Veilrith growled. The creature met his gaze without hesitation. "Name's Elias." Veilrith felt the weight of his own identity press against him. Dragons did not offer names lightly. But something had shifted the moment that crash split the sky. "Veilrith." Elias gave a single nod. "All right, Veilrith. Here's the deal. My ship's wrecked. Your wings are wrecked. This planet sucks." A faint smirk touched his lips. "So until further notice, looks like we're roommates." Veilrith stared at him. No fear. No submission. No reverence. Just matter-of-fact survival. The impossible had not only occurred. It had started talking. And for the first time since exile, the silence of the dead world did not feel absolute. The ash storms came without warning. One moment the horizon lay flat and grey. The next, the sky roared. Veilrith watched from beneath the jagged basalt ridge as walls of dust rose like tidal waves, swallowing the landscape in spirals of choking debris. In his weakened state, such a storm would have buried him alive. But he was no longer alone. Inside, Elias shouted from the half-built shelter near the wreckage. The structure was crude but efficient. Sections of hull plating reinforced with support beams scavenged from the crashed ship. Solar collectors angled outward, already gathering what little light filtered through the ash. Veilrith did not move at first. Dragons did not retreat from storms. Elias ran toward him anyway. "You want to prove something? Do it after you can stand without shaking," he muttered, bracing a shoulder against Veilrith's uninjured side. The dragon stiffened. No one had ever pushed against him and lived. Yet Elias did not push in challenge. He pushed to support. Together, awkward, unbalanced, they crossed the short distance to shelter before the storm swallowed the ridge completely. Metal screamed as ash battered the structure. Inside, dim emergency lighting flickered to life. The air processor hummed steadily, filtering toxins from the atmosphere. Veilrith lowered himself heavily against the reinforced wall. Elias immediately knelt beside his damaged wing, adjusting the carbon fiber brace he had constructed from hull fragments. "You'll heal," Elias said. "Takes time." "I do not require reassurance," Veilrith growled. "Good," Elias replied. "Wasn't offering any." Days blurred into routine. Elias worked relentlessly. He stripped the ship's reactor core for portable power cells. He rigged hydroponic trays using nutrient gel from emergency rations. He even calibrated atmospheric condensers to harvest trace moisture from the air. Every action carried the same underlying assumption. We are staying alive. Veilrith observed quietly. Humans were fragile. No scales, no claws, no fire. Yet Elias endured conditions that would break lesser dragons. He slept little, ate sparingly, repaired constantly, and he spoke. Not orders, not threats. Stories. Of oceans that stretched beyond sight. Of forests that breathed in rhythm with the wind. Of cities where light never faded. "Why tell me this?" Veilrith finally asked one night as the storm winds faded outside. Elias leaned back against the wall, wiping grease from his hands. "Because this place doesn't get to be the only story we know." Veilrith stared at the faint flame burning inside the metal fire ring. A world without story. A life without purpose. That was exile. "You were cast out," Elias said quietly. "Why?" Veilrith's jaw tightened. "I failed to obey." "That it?" Silence. "I refused to burn a hatchery," Veilrith admitted at last. "The council called it weakness." Elias' expression did not change. "Sounds like strength to me." Something shifted in Veilrith's chest. A pressure. Not pain. Memory. That night, long after Elias slept, Veilrith focused inward. He inhaled slowly, deep, into the place where his fire had once lived. The exile surgeons had damaged his gland, but they had not destroyed it. They had suppressed it. And suppression is not extinction. He exhaled carefully. A spark leapt from his jaws. Small, brief, but real. Veilrith stared at it as it flickered against the metal ring. Again. He inhaled. This time, the flame burned longer, stronger, not wild, controlled. The fire had not died. It had remembered. Behind him, Elias' voice stirred groggily. "See, told you you'd heal." Veilrith did not turn around. He watched the flame dance. For the first time since exile, he did not feel like something discarded. He felt like something rebuilding. And far above the ash-choked sky, faint signals flickered in orbit. Scanners. Returning. Veilrith felt them before he saw them. A faint vibration in the upper atmosphere. A disturbance in the ash clouds. The same subtle hum that had accompanied his exile drop. He stepped out of the shelter slowly, wings flexing against reinforced braces. The ash plains stretched endlessly before him, still barren, still grey, but no longer silent. Above, the clouds rippled unnaturally. Elias followed a moment later, scanning the sky with a salvaged optical lens. "You're sensing that too, right?" he asked. "Yes." A streak of silver pierced the cloud cover. Then another. Council vessels. Sleek. Narrow. Efficient. They did not descend immediately. They circled first, scanning, confirming. "Routine verification," Veilrith growled. They returned to confirm death. Elias lowered the lens slowly. "Well," he muttered, "that's awkward." A beam of pale blue light swept across the plains. It passed over rock formations, wreckage debris, and paused, locked. 2 heat signatures. Elias exhaled through his nose. Guess they found the roommates. The first dropship detached from orbit and descended in silence. Its landing thrusters scattered ash in violent spirals as it touched down less than 100 meters away. The hatch opened. 6 armored figures stepped onto the dead world. Council enforcers. Their armor shimmered with defensive plating. Energy rifles locked into firing position almost immediately. The lead officer's visor tilted toward Veilrith. "Subject Veilrith," the amplified voice echoed. "You were declared deceased." "I was declared inconvenient," Veilrith replied. The officer's gaze shifted to Elias. "Unknown species detected. Identify." Elias stepped forward calmly, hands visible at his sides. "Name's Elias. Crashed here. Been keeping your exile alive." Murmurs flickered across the soldiers' comms. "Human," one whispered. "The expansion species." The lead officer adjusted his stance. This dragon was sentenced to planetary termination. Interference is unauthorized. Elias glanced sideways at Veilrith. "They call this termination," he said quietly. "Feels more like laziness." The officer raised his weapon. "Stand aside. The sentence will be completed." Veilrith felt something ancient rise within him. Not rage. Not blind fury. Choice. He stepped forward, placing himself between Elias and the rifles. His wings spread, fully now, though scarred. "You exiled me for refusing to burn the defenseless," Veilrith said, voice steady. "And now you return to finish what you lacked the courage to witness." The officer's weapon hummed, charging. Dragon physiology weakened. Resistance minimal. Elias spoke without raising his voice. "You sure about that?" Veilrith inhaled. Deep. Into the place that had once held only smoke. The exile surgeons had suppressed his fire. But suppression was not removal. The spark ignited, then surged. When Vaelrith exhaled, the flame that erupted was not thin or fragile. It was a column of golden fire that roared across the ash plain, stopping inches short of the soldiers' boots, controlled with terrifying precision. Heat shimmered violently. Armor sensors flared in alarm. The enforcers staggered backward. "Energy output exceeding exile projections," one shouted. Vaelrith lowered his head, eyes blazing. "You miscalculated." Silence fell. Even the ash seemed to pause midair. The lead officer slowly lowered his rifle. "This changes nothing," he said tightly. "It changes everything," Elias replied. Above them, the orbiting vessels adjusted formation, uncertain now. The officer signaled retreat. The dropship lifted away, engines roaring as it rejoined the circling fleet. Vaelrith watched them ascend into the clouds. "They will report this," he said quietly. "Good," Elias answered. The sky sealed shut again. But something fundamental had shifted. The Council had expected to confirm a corpse. Instead, they had rediscovered a dragon, and discovered something far more dangerous beside him. A human who refused to leave. The Council fleet did not fire. That was the first surprise. Vaelrith stood motionless as the silver vessels lingered beyond the ash clouds, holding position in high orbit. Their weapons remained cold. Their shields shimmered but did not advance. They were watching, calculating, uncertain. Elias folded his arms, squinting up at the faint glints in the sky. "They're not used to variables," he said, "especially the stubborn kind." Vaelrith's wings shifted, stronger now, scar tissue tightening along the healed fractures. "They will return with more ships." "Probably." Elias turned and walked back toward the growing settlement, because it was no longer just a shelter. Solar arrays now lined the basalt ridge, angled to catch filtered light. Atmospheric processors hummed steadily, converting toxic air into breathable pockets. Hydroponic trays stretched beneath transparent panels, faint green pushing through conditioned soil. Green, on a world certified lifeless. Vaelrith followed slowly. Each step no longer felt like survival. It felt deliberate. The Council had exiled him here to be erased, to become proof that defiance ended in silence. Instead, the silence had been broken. "You didn't kill them," Elias said without looking back. "No." "Why?" Vaelrith considered the question carefully. "Because fear would validate them." Elias smirked faintly. "Yeah, that tracks." They reached the ridge overlooking the ash plains. Wind moved faintly now, real wind, not toxic gusts. Moisture levels had risen fractionally due to Elias' atmospheric work. It was small, but measurable. Above, one Council vessel detached from formation and descended alone. Not a dropship. A diplomatic cutter. Vaelrith's eyes narrowed. They adapt quickly. The cutter landed at a distance, hatch opening slowly. This time, only one figure emerged. Unarmed. The High Magistrate. He removed his helmet, ash swirling around polished armor. "Vaelrith," he called across the distance, "you were declared unfit for dragonkind." Vaelrith did not bow. "And yet I remain." The magistrate's gaze shifted toward Elias. "You interfere in sovereign judgment." Elias shrugged lightly. "You call it judgment. We call it abandonment." The magistrate studied the solar arrays. The green shoots. The dragon standing taller than before. This world was chosen for its sterility, he said carefully. Then your data was incomplete, Elias replied. Vailrith stepped forward, voice steady but resonant. You exiled me to prove I would fade. He gestured toward the growing life behind him. I did not fade. The magistrate's jaw tightened. What do you intend? Vailrith glanced briefly at Elias. The human gave a slight nod. We intend, Vailrith said, to build. Silence stretched between them. You would turn this wasteland into territory? The magistrate asked. No, Elias answered calmly. Into proof. The magistrate studied them for a long moment before speaking again. The council will debate this development. Do that, Elias said. But next time you scan this planet? Vailrith's eyes ignited, not in rage, but in certainty. You will not find death. The magistrate returned to his cutter without another word. The ship ascended. The fleet slowly withdrew. Vailrith stood at the ridge as sunlight, true sunlight, finally pierced a break in the ash clouds. A single beam struck the ground beside the first green sprout. This planet had been a grave. Now it was an argument. A dragon they tried to erase. A human who refused to leave. Together, they had done the one thing the council never predicted. They had made life where there was none, and in the stars above, word began to spread. Exile had failed. Something new had begun.